Good morning. Welcome to this year's Memorial Day ceremony. I'm Carl Povolitis, and I will be your Masters of Ceremony for this year's program. This is a day where we gather to remember those who have made the ultimate sacrifice so that we may live in freedom. It seems fitting that we take a little time today to remember these heroes. We may not have known them personally, but we take this time to remember and honor their service and sacrifice to a cause greater than themselves. And we commit ourselves that their accomplishments and sacrifice shall never be forgotten. At this point, would you please rise and join Major Stephen Mickle, the chaplain of the 40th Division of the California Army National Guard, for the invocation, and please remain standing after the invocation.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, bless the celebration we have here in Glendale today, as we remember those who have and are putting themselves in harm's way for our freedom. We remember that some of them have paid the ultimate sacrifice for this freedom we enjoy so much. Remember their loved ones who must endure their loss. So please hold all our servicemen and women in your strong arms. Cover them with your sheltering grace and your presence as they stand in a gap for our protection, both here and abroad. We also remember their families who must endure long periods of separation from loved ones. We ask for your unique blessings to fill their homes, and we pray your peace, provision, and strength will fill their lives. May the members of our armed forces and first responders be supplied with courage to face each day, and may they trust in the Lord's mighty power to accomplish each task. Bless them and keep them safe. In your name we pray. Amen.
I would now like to present the 40th Division Honor Guard of the California National Guard under the direction of Los Angeles County Veterans Commissioner Carville Gay, who's also a retired staff sergeant from the California National Guard, for the presentation of the colors. This will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Don Burkus and the National Anthem by the 40th Division Band of the California Army National Guard. As a reminder, veterans, whether in uniform or not, may salute the flag as the flag code now allows.
Color Guard, present the colors, please. Color. Halt. Reset. Arm.
Before we do the pledge, I would just like to tell you a quick story. My mother was born in 1900. She came to this country in 1914 from Romania. She married my father in 1920. In 1922, I was born. As soon as I was old enough to understand what was going on, my mother used to tell me how lucky I was to be born in this country. And since then, I think she told me, what she told me was very, very true. I love this country. If you'll follow me in the Pledge to Allegiance, we will do that now. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Color guard, post the colors.
Right shoulder, march. Color, turn, march. Color. Post. Post. Color. Ready. Up. Raise that. Arm. Right shoulder. Arm. Color. Turn. March. Thank you. You may be seated. I'd like to thank the California National Guard for their rendition of the national anthem, and Don Burkus for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. For those of you that don't know Don, he's a Glendale resident and retired businessman who was a U.S. Army Corps, or Army Air Corps veteran flying B-24 Liberators in the Pacific Theater during World War II. It was such an honor to have such a distinguished veteran lead us in the pledge. At this point, let me take a moment to introduce a few of the dignitaries here with us today. Representing the 29th Congressional District and always a supporter of our military community is Congressman Adam Schiff. We have Talon Manjilou representing State Senator Carol Liu. We have Assemblyman Mike Gatto with us here today. And we have Supervisor Michael Antonovich, also a veteran of the U.S. Army Reserve. From the Glendale City Council, we have Mayor Zare Sinanian, Councilmember Laura Friedman, Councilmember Frank Quintero. And they may be in the audience. We also have Councilmember Dave Weaver and Ara Najarian. We also have with us our City Manager, Scott Ochoa, Police Chief Robert Castro, and Fire Chief Harold Scoggins. And then if you would, I'd just like to take a moment, as you see we have a couple of rows reserved for Gold Star families, and I would really like to just take a moment to have us all acknowledge those families that are here today that have a family member's name on one of the walls on the memorial. So we appreciate your presence here, and as I said, we are here to never forget the sacrifice that your family members made in the service of our country. At this time, I'd like to introduce the Mayor of the City of Glendale, the Honorable Azari Sinanian, to make some welcoming comments.
Good morning. Welcome. It's a beautiful day. It's a great day for us all to remember and commemorate the memory of all those that have made the ultimate sacrifice for the safety and security of our homeland. And to many of us, this may seem like a historical issue. We're looking back at all those individuals who have heeded the call of duty and have made the sacrifice. However, I think this is a day when we should all think of this prospectively as well, because it's a historical fact, it's just the reality of life that the sacrifice that's being asked to be made and that's being made is something that will happen in the future. And we as individuals, residents, elected officials, everyone, need to ask ourselves the question, what are we doing to justify that sacrifice? How are we leading our lives? Are we being the types of citizens who deserve the sacrifice that has been historically made and will be made in the future? We have to keep conscious of the fact that every individual that has died in any war throughout US history is someone's son, someone's brother, someone's sister, husband, loved one, wife. They have families, children. And only in that way we can really truly appreciate the magnitude of the action that they have taken, so that we today can be free and we can enjoy those values and that life which we do today in this great nation. So I ask once again for all of us to remember those that have died, and on a daily basis live our lives in a way where we can say, yes, I serve those same values, I serve those same principles for which over 1 million Americans throughout history have sacrificed their lives. Thank you.
And now I'd like to introduce Congressman Adam Schiff to make a few comments.
Thank you. It's a great honor to be with you this year to pay tribute to those that have lost their lives in service of this country. 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to visit our troops again in Afghanistan, to be briefed by General Dunford, who is the head of our U.S. forces and the ISAF forces in Afghanistan. But the highlight is always having a chance to sit down with our troops, to have lunch or dinner, to have a chance to thank them for their service, to hear the challenges they're facing. And I was very struck by one of them, a young petty officer who's in the reserves. She works for the state of California, lives in Sacramento, and is raising 3 children. And asked her what it was like having to say goodbye to her kids for a lengthy deployment. And she told me how very hard it is. That of the 3 young children she has, her 5-year-old struggles the most when she's deployed. And prior to her deployment, she went into her closet and found that her 5-year-old had glued all of her shoes together. And when she asked her husband, how could you let our son glue all of my shoes together? Her husband answered, I don't want you to go either. But she was proud to go. She was honored to go. She was grateful to be called to duty. And she is a perfect illustration of the kind of dedication commitment, and sacrifice being made by our men and women in uniform and their families back home. I wanted this Memorial Day to ask you to keep in your thoughts 74 sailors from the Vietnam War who lost their lives. These are sailors who were aboard a ship called the Frankie Evans. The Frankie Evans was providing artillery support to our troops in Vietnam when it was called away on a training exercise in the South China Sea. During that exercise, it was cut in half by an Australian vessel, the Melbourne, and within a matter of seconds, 74 sailors lost their lives. Some years later, when that now iconic and powerful Vietnam War Memorial Wall was constructed and first displayed in Washington, D.C., many of the families of those lost aboard the Evans went to see their family members' names inscribed. Imagine their dismay when they went and looked for the names of their loved ones and found that they were not there. You see, the Frankie Evans was just outside of the artificial line in the water that separated the combat zone from the non-combat zone. And being outside of that line in the water, they were not entitled to be on the wall. Ever since, the families of the Frankie Evans have fought to try to have their loved ones included, to take their rightful place among those who gave their lives during the war. Some years ago, this was raised with me by a young man who was an infant at the time that his father was on the Frankie Evans and lost his life. And I went to go see then Secretary of Defense Gates to ask for his support. We were unsuccessful in getting Secretary Gates to move the inclusion of those names on the wall, and so I waited until the next Defense Secretary and went to see Leon Panetta. And once again, we were refused. Most recently, I went to see Secretary Hagel, the first Vietnam veteran to serve as Defense Secretary, and he has taken the matter under consideration. This time we have the support of the U.S. Navy Secretary, Ray Mabus, and last week I offered an amendment to the defense bill when it was on the floor, urging the Defense Secretary to add these names of these 74 sailors to the Vietnam Memorial. And that amendment passed as part of the defense bill with an overwhelming and bipartisan vote. And it is my sincere hope that next year, when I come visit with you on Memorial Day, I'll be able to share with you the news, I hope, that these 74 sailors and their families have the honor of being inscribed on that wall. It in no way detracts from the brave service of the more than 58,000 other service members who appear on that wall. And I have to think those 58,000 others, none of them would begrudge having their fellow sailors and service members commemorated in that way. So I ask you to keep them in your thoughts these many years later. Send a prayer to their families and maybe one to our Defense Secretary, and perhaps next year we'll have good news to share. Thank you again for inviting me. It's such a pleasure always to commemorate Memorial Day here in Glendale. You do such a fabulous job, and I want to thank the Glendale City Council for their support of the inclusion of the names of the sailors on the Frankie Evans, and colleagues like Mike Gatto in the legislature, Buck McKean, the chair of the Armed Services Committee, who allowed me to make the amendment on the floor, Mike Antonovich, who has also been very supportive of this effort. I thank you all and wish you a wonderful and thoughtful Memorial Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Schiff. At this point, I'd like to introduce Mike Gatto, our Assembly member, for a few comments.
Thank you so much to all of you for coming out here today to mark this most sacred of holidays. I've always felt like Memorial Day is very special, and it's not just because I come from a family where so many served. If you think about it, Memorial Day is like no other holiday. There's no consumerism, there's no exchanging of gifts. We don't watch fireworks. And thankfully for forgetful husbands like me, I don't have to buy my wife flowers. Instead, we gather in places like this to mark the contributions of all those who gave their lives in service of our country. Many of us today will make additional trips to places of worship, to grave sites, to mourn those in our families who served but who are no longer with us. The purity of these gatherings and the purity of our thoughts and prayers on a day like today are so important, as is the realization that each of us have on days like this on just how lucky we are to be alive. Memorial Day is more than a day off work or a trip to the beach or a barbecue. All of those things are fine to do, sure, and many of us will be doing those later today with our loved ones, but we also must pause on a day like today to mark our thankfulness, to make sure that we pause for a moment and we internalize and externalize that we are appreciative to live in a land where so many patriots found our nation's ideals worth fighting for and worth dying for. And I thank all of you who came here today because I know that you certainly share that sentiment. Paying the proper respect to our military fallen is an ongoing task. It's not one that is just a once-a-year thing. It's something that happens all year long. This year, I'm proud to report some good news out of Sacramento. And I know lots of you are shocked that there could be good news out of Sacramento, but this is a little piece of good news, 2 significant milestones in our task. The first one is, has to do with Fort Ord in Northern California. Since Fort Ord was taken out of service as a fort, decommissioned if that's the proper term, there's been a movement afoot to put a veterans ceremony on some of the more beautiful land there. Now, times are tough everywhere, and the federal government, under the leadership of Congressman Adam Schiff, gave a significant sum to this cause. And private foundations, many of you, stepped up and contributed additional funds. But there was still a pretty significant shortfall. Well, I'm chairman of the Appropriations Committee in the California State Assembly, and most of you know I'm cheap. I'm very frugal with taxpayer money, but every once in a while we get to spend money on something that is truly special, and I think this cemetery falls in that category. So last year, my committee amended Senate Bill 232 to appropriate $1 million to the Fort Ord Cemetery Fund, and it now looks like this ceremony is going to happen. And so our fallen in the state of California will have a much-deserved and appropriate final resting place at a place where so many did their basic training, including 2 members of my own family. And not to be outdone, those of us in Southern California also have to step up. There's a plan in works to build a new veterans ceremony in Southern California too, and to make sure that we fund it adequately. I'm proud to report that the initial bill on this subject, which was Assembly Bill 1453, just passed my committee last week by a vote of 17-0 last Friday. And I think it's putting us well on our way to making sure that our servicemen and women who gave all have a final place in Southern California to spend there forever and have their loved ones have a place where they can come visit. Reverend Aaron Kilborn said something that I think is really appropriate on a day like today. He said that our dead soldiers' silence is what sings our national anthem. That quote is a reminder that their absence are really what powers our country. Their absence is what makes our way of life possible. Well, we, my friends, need not be silent. We can speak for them. We can make sure that we live our lives every day in a way that makes them proud, and that we honor each and every one of them when we come together to gather on Memorial Day. Thank you so much for coming here today. I really appreciate all of you making sure that we pause and honor our fallen. Thank you so much.
It's interesting that Memorial Day, in many ways, it's a small world, and you don't have to go far or look far to be touched by someone who's made that sacrifice. And the congressman wanted to make sure that we acknowledge somebody in the audience, and that's Randy Slaughter, that many of us know, because as he's talking about the Frankie Adams, Randy Slaughter was on board a sister ship when, in the same area when that ship went down. So we just wanted to acknowledge Randy for both his service and being there. And then you really begin to understand the importance of Memorial Day and why we need to remember those that we've lost in the service of our country. And with that, I'd like to introduce Supervisor Michael Antonovich for a few remarks.
Thank you very much. On Saturday, we had our annual Veterans Program, and the 40th band played for the people. We appreciated them participating at Arcadia Park. We had about 5,000 veterans who were there. Fritz Coleman, each year, who also served in the United States Navy, is our Master of Ceremonies, and he does this as part of his commitment for Memorial Day, not because he's employed by NBC. He does this as a private citizen of the community. This is a time when it's very good that our area that we live in, we reside in. We began at 8 o'clock this morning at Montrose, and the congressman and the assemblyman and the mayor and the councilwoman were there. Today we have it here, and then we go to La Cañada for the parade. And there are a lot of communities that don't have this celebration, this memorial event each year. But it's very important that we continue this tradition. Peace comes through strength. Military strength provides strength and opportunity and hope, but freedom. But also strong families provide strength to a nation. And it's important that we provide those strong families so that our children can grow up with an understanding of responsibility, an understanding of commitment, an understanding of community service, and a faith in God. And through these efforts, America will remain strong and continue to be the leader of the world in having strong families, a strong community, and strong participation. The area that we happen to be blessed to live in, the Glendale, the Burbank, La Cañada Flint Ridge, Montrose, La Crescenta, have had a sense of commitment and community. And I think it can best be illustrated by Don, who's been involved in this community since I was very young. And now we're as young as you, Don. What happened? And we're very pleased with the Congressman's success with that effort to recognize those men and women so that they'll be recognized on that Vietnam Memorial. And working together, we're going to have a better nation, a better community. But it starts with the family, it starts with our representatives, but it starts with each of the individual citizens so that the young people have an opportunity to having positive role models so that they can be the leaders of tomorrow to respect those who've given the ultimate for our freedoms and our security. And thank you, and God bless.
I would now like to introduce Glendale resident and star of the musical stage, Matthew Ian Welsh, for a rendition of America the Beautiful. That will be followed by the POW MIA presentation by City of Glendale Audit Commissioner David Kevorkian.
On thee and Christ
shining sea. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond the years. Thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human fears. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood. Come see the shining sea.
As a public servant of this city that is home to over 10,000 veterans, it is my distinct honor to lead this segment of the ceremony. And those who have served in the armed forces of the United States of America are ever mindful that the sweetness of enduring peace has always been tainted by the bitterness of personal sacrifice. We are compelled to never forget that while we enjoy our daily pleasures, we enjoy our privileges and our rights, there are those who have endured and may still be enduring the agonies of pain, deprivation, and internment. And for those heroes that are missing from our ranks, they are called POWs, they are called MIAs, they are called comrades. But we call them our brothers and our sisters. They are unable to be with their loved ones and their families today. So we join together to pay our humble tribute to them and bear witness to their continued absence. This honor ceremony symbolizes that they are with us today, here in spirit, here in the depths of our hearts, and in the impressions of our memories. But they are not here with us today. Their chairs are empty, but saved for their hope to return. Before we continue, let us pause to reflect together, to remember their absence, to recognize our prisoners of war and those missing in action. I would like to ask you to stand and remain standing for a moment of silent prayer as the explorers approach the honors table. Let us remember and honor the United States Air Force. Let us honor and remember the United States Army. Let us remember and honor the United States Navy. Let us remember and honor the United States Marine Corps. Let us remember and honor the United States Coast Guard. Let us remember and honor the men and women, the brothers and sisters, the friends and neighbors who are prisoners of war or missing in action, from all branches of service that, unfortunately and undeservingly, are too often forgotten. Let us remember them. Please be seated. I would like to explain the meaning of this ceremony. I call your attention to this small table. It occupies a place of dignity and honor. It is a table set for all of our prisoners of war and those missing in action from all wars that our great nation has endured. This table is set for one. It is small, symbolizing the frailty of one prisoner, alone against his or her suppressors. The empty place represents Americans still missing from each of the 5 services: the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, and of course, civilians who did not separate themselves from the responsibility of service and patriotism. You may have noticed that the table is round. It shows our everlasting concern for those that gave the greatest sacrifice for our freedom and prosperity. You may have noticed the tablecloth. It is white, symbolizing the purity of their intentions to respond to our country's call to arms, so that we and our children could remain free from oppression. Let us remember. And notice the candle, the lone candle, which symbolizes the frailty of a prisoner alone, trying to stand up against his oppressors. And the candle is lit, symbolizing the upward reach of their unconquerable spirit. The candle is reminiscent of the light of hope which lives in our hearts to illuminate their way home, away from their captors, and into the open arms of a grateful nation. Let us remember. And the blank handkerchief. The black handkerchief on the table reminds us of those who will not be coming home. Let us remember. And the red ribbon on the vase represents the thousands who bear witness to their unyielding determination to demand a proper accounting for our missing who are not among us today. Let us remember. And the rose, a single rose, reminds us of the loved ones, of the families of our comrades who keep faith and await their return, hopefully one day. And the red color of the rose signifies the blood they have shed to ensure the freedom of our great United States of America. Let us remember. And you may have noticed that there's a slice of lemon on the bread plate. It is there to remind us of their bitter fate. If we don't bring them home, let us remember. And there's a pinch of salt on the plate, symbolizing the salty tears of their families as they wait and remember. And the glass, the inverted glass. The glass is inverted because they cannot toast with us today, but maybe tomorrow, if we remember. And as we look upon this empty table, let us remember and honor our comrades, not as ghosts from the past, but as the souls of our present and the spirits of our future. And for those of you who have served with them, who call them your comrades and depended upon their might and aid. Since you are here today, then surely they have not forsaken you. We must remember those we depended on to go into battle, because they depend on us to bring them home. And upon retiring the table, and as the explorer extinguishes this candle, let us transfer its flame into our own hearts. Let us remember now and forget never.
As is our tradition in Glendale, and to honor those that have fallen so that we may live in freedom, we will now have the laying of the roses program as presented by the Glendale Police Explorers. Thank you to the Glendale Police Explorers for that ceremony under the guidance and leadership of Officer Teal Metz today. It is now my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, who is a member of our community, someone who's been committed to service both in the armed services and locally. Colonel Nancy Sumner recently retired as the commander of the 146th Medical Group 115th Airlift Wing after 31 years of dedicated service. She has served in Bosnia, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, the Ukraine, Belize, Afghanistan, and relief operations in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. Many of us are fortunate to know Colonel Sumner here through her work as a registered nurse at Glendale Memorial Hospital or through her other volunteer work in the community. Needless to say, she's been an active volunteer, a supporter of veterans' wellness, and was just recently appointed to the State of California Community College Board of Governors by Governor Brown. Her accomplishments are way too many to list here, but her biography is in your program. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Colonel Nancy Sumner.
Have to switch the glasses out here. Good morning. I am honored to be your keynote speaker today. Mayor, council members, distinguished guests, veterans, family, community, and to all of the relatives of our fallen servicemen and women, I salute you. Memorial Day is a day when we pause to give thanks to the people who fought for the things we have and continue to serve and fight for our freedom. This day is set to honor the memory of our departed heroes. Each member of the armed forces swears an oath to support and defend the Constitution. The unspoken part of the oath is the willingness to lay down one's life to protect our liberty. Our freedom is not free. And the sacrifices of servicemen and women throughout history stand as a constant, powerful reminders of the ultimate price some have paid. On this day, we remember and pray for the fallen. Let us not forget those guarding our freedoms today. I would like to share with you what the meaning of this day means to me and what we can do as a community to keep the spirit of the Memorial Day alive. Memorial Day was first widely observed back in May of 1868. The celebration commemorated the sacrifices of the Civil War, and the proclamation was made by General John A. Logan. Following this proclamation, participants decorated graves of more than 20,000 Union Confederate soldiers. Southern women began to decorate the graves with flowers and with flags of the fallen warriors, and soon they designated a special day, and that showed up with, like I said, with flowers. Soon people to the north began to do the same. One of the Union generals suggested to do a day, to set aside a day, a decorative day for the grave sites. May 30th was selected because there had been no war fought on that day. It was a neutral day for the South and for the North. In 1971, Memorial Day became a national federal holiday, designated as the last Monday in May. Today, there are over 4.6 billion deaths since 1753. President Ronald Reagan is credited for reviving the practice of honoring Memorial Day at its meeting. I would like to quote one of his speeches he gave at Arlington's National Cemetery on Memorial Day in 1986. He stated, "So many wonderful men and women rest here. Men and women who led colorful, vivid, and passionate lives. They were fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, friends, and significant others. We must always remember that peace is a fragile thing that needs constant vigilance. We owe them a promise to look to the world with a steady gaze and perhaps a resigned toughness, though we have adversaries. In the world and challenges, and the only way to meet them and maintain the peace is by staying strong. We must be strong enough to create peace where it does not exist, and strong enough to protect it where it does. I believe too often we fail to remember those who gave their life, or those whose life today bears the scars as a lasting memory of that sacrifice and commitment that they have given to our country. Since 9/11, there have been over 7,000 service member deaths, over 6,400 male and over 150 female. Today, a family member of a fallen hero may be right next to you and you wouldn't even know it. Some wounds show, but the wounds you cannot see can take a lifetime to heal, if they can ever be healed at all. I'd like to share a story about the flag and the importance of the flag to me. When I was in Bosnia, I experienced my first experience of a soldier killed in action. The loss of this young soldier, a father, husband, son, and friend, devastated us all. I heard they were going to transport his body home, and I told my troops we needed to be on the flight line to honor him. For many of us, this was our first time. So many emotions, but yet there was pride, honor, sorrow during our conversations. As the coffin was offloaded from the truck, we lined up 10 on each side. The coffin was draped with the American flag. As it passed us, we rendered a salute and held our salute until the coffin was loaded onto the C-130 aircraft, waiting to take him home. One of his best friends escorted his body up the ramp, and the ramp closed, flying his body home. How we honor the dead is done with respect, honor, and pride. This airman served distinction and honor. Let us remember those we have lost. Let us offer a thank you for the sacrifices to their families, for all they have sacrificed as well. Some traditions: attend a memorial service and get a community involved. That is what we are doing today. The day is still young. There's lots of parades and things you can go to. It is a tradition to fly the flag of the United States at half-mast from dawn until noon. Many people visit cemeteries and memorials, particularly to honor those who have died in military service. Many volunteers place an American flag on each grave in national cemeteries or local cemeteries. For a few years ago, I volunteered with the VFW, the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, the veterans, the families. We placed over 500 flags on graves. As we walked and placed the flags on the graves, you couldn't stop without reading the headstones. There was Civil War all the way up to present war. Taking the names, we took time to pause. You can realize every nationality, every culture, different centuries are at all these different memorials and different grave sites. To be honored to put flags on the grave of a fallen soldier or a fallen comrade or even a family member that served in the service is something that I challenge everybody here today to just take up that. Put a flag, volunteer, get involved. Memorial Day is known as a time of remembrance. It is also a time for us in uniform to reaffirm our own commitment of selfless service. By doing so, we not only honor the memory of those before us, but we also vow to carry on the legacy of the excellence in the world's best military force. So let us pause with respect and honor on this Memorial Day to remember those who fought, for those who gave their life, and for those who willingly stand ready to do the same without question, to defend our freedom. We owe each one of them the highest regard, respect, and honor, and the assurance that their commitment to this nation's freedom will never be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Sumner, for the very moving remarks. And we've got to thank the 40th Division Marching Band for their rendition of the Armed Forces medley. I'm sure you all very astute, and you caught that they honored all of the services. That included the Merchant Marine, the Coast Guard, the Air Force, the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the Army. They said that was a wonderful performance, and they've been sitting over there in the sun, so let's give them one more hand. I'd like to take a couple of moments just to say some thank yous to the people who make this event possible. To the Patriotism Committee of the Veterans Coalition for putting together the event. It's their hard work that really brings this together each year. If you're here as a committee member, would you please stand and let's give them a hand. And on that committee, we'd like to give out a special thanks to David Gevorkian, who made a sizable contribution that helped make this event possible. As a side note, if you know anyone who is now serving in Iraq or Afghanistan, please let that committee know so they can evaluate the application and display a banner, which we display on our street poles here in Glendale. They also have one other event tonight for Veterans Assistance and Education up at the YWCA, and that will be on May 29th from 5 to 6:30. So if you know anybody who'd like to attend that event, that's also available. We'd like to thank Congressman Adam Schiff for the flag that will fly over the monument this next year. To all of the organizations who donated the wreaths. There are some very beautiful wreaths here to honor our men and women in the military who have fallen, and the organizations that provided those wreaths are the Glendale Homeowners Coordinating Council, the Glendale Burbank Republican Assembly, the Glendale City Employees Association, Glendale's Elks Lodge 1289, I'm sure there's one or two of those in the audience, the Glendale Kiwanis Club, and I know there's a few of those in the audience, the Glendale Management Association, the Glendale Police Officers Association, Glendale Sunrise Rotary, Jewel City Kiwanis, Verdugo Woodlands West Homeowners Association. Thank them again for providing those wonderful wreaths. You know, as you leave this place and you leave this ceremony this morning, I would encourage you to walk up to the memorial and take a look at the names that are inscribed there. We may not know those names, but this might be the opportunity for you to take a moment and make this a little bit more personal. The names on that wall were our friends, our neighbors, members of our community. They have sacrificed much. And so I would encourage you to make that personal so that we don't forget. Take a moment to learn their story, just of one of them, and make it a little bit more personal to you and the community. My final thank you would really be to thank you all for coming today. Thank you for your commitment to remember those that have served in our armed services who have paid that ultimate price. We honor their memories today and your commitment that their service will always be remembered. To bring the ceremony to a formal conclusion, I'd like to reintroduce Matthew Ian Welch for God Bless America, which will be followed by the benediction from Major Stephen Mickle, which will then be followed by taps.
Since I heard and
Let us pray. Dear Lord, help us to remember that there is no greater love than this, to lay down one's life for friends. This is the reason we are here this day, to give tribute, respect, remembrance, and honor to the gallant men and women who have laid down their lives for us and others who called upon them for their help. Bless their very souls and protect those who now stand in harm's way. If they are tired, give them strength. If they are wounded and suffering, give them comfort. If they are lonely, touch them with your gentle hand and let them know you are near them. Grant them strength, wisdom, and help through your power and your limitless love. Bless everyone here today at this event and see them safely home to places of work or wherever they may go. Bless this country we love and clothe it in your care. We ask you forever to hold us and ours in your holy embrace and grant our nation peace. In your name we pray. Amen.
That concludes our ceremony. Thank you very much for coming today.